It's late. The kind of late where the world feels thinner, quieter, as if something beneath everything is finally audible. You lie there, staring at the ceiling or the dim outline of the window, feeling that heaviness you don't name anymore. The weight that settles in your chest when the distractions fall away and there's nothing left but you and the echo of another long day. There's a stillness in the room, but inside you there's movement. Small tremors of memory, fragments of conversations you wish had gone differently. Old wounds, brushing against the surface, like they've been waiting for this exact moment to speak. And in that silence, something curious happens. You notice, again, how strange it is that life seems to know exactly where you're most tender. How it keeps pressing on the same places, again and again, as if following a map you never gave it. You replay the patterns you can't outrun, the same insecurities, the same fears, the same invisible bruise that every relationship, every failure, every disappointment somehow manages to find, with unnerving precision. It feels too specific, doesn't it? Too pointed? Too familiar, as if your life isn't simply happening, but happening with intention. You lie there, listening to the murmur of your own thoughts, thoughts you've avoided all day by staying busy, staying loud, staying in motion. But now motion has stopped, and the truth you've tried not to notice settles beside you like a quiet visitor. There's a pattern here, not one you chose consciously, not one you ever asked for, but one you've been living inside for as long as you can remember. You think back to childhood, to the moments that shaped you long before you ever had language for them. The tone of a parent's voice, the silence at the dinner table, the way you learned to shrink or harden or pretend you didn't care, the first time you felt unseen, the first time you felt not enough, and even now, years later, those early echoes still ripple through your life, showing up in the choices you make, the people you fall toward, the wounds that resurface exactly when you think you've healed them. How can something so old still feel so calibrated? You turn on your side, shift your weight, breathe a little deeper, but the thought lingers. Why does your pain feel crafted? Why does it seem tailored to your exact shape? Your exact weaknesses, your exact history. You've told yourself it's coincidence, or bad luck, or the inevitable wear and tear of being human. But in the stillness of this night, that explanation doesn't feel big enough. It doesn't account for the uncanny precision of your experiences. The way certain challenges arrive at the exact moment you're least prepared, yet somehow most in need of them. It doesn't explain why certain people appear in your life like mirrors, reflecting the parts of you you'd rather not see. It doesn't explain why your deepest struggles are also the ones that keep returning, changing form but never intention. There's a soft ache in your chest as the thought expands. What if none of it is random? Not the wounds that cut so personally, not the patterns that shadow your steps, not the lessons you keep stumbling into as if drawn by some invisible thread. A part of you resists that idea. Another part of you feels strangely relieved by it. Because if your struggles aren't accidents, then maybe they aren't punishments either. Maybe there's something else entirely. You shift again, letting the darkness settle around you, letting the question settle inside you. What if every experience that shaped you, every heartbreak, every fear, every quiet disappointment, wasn't a cosmic mistake, but something intentional, not inflicted upon you, but woven into your path with a precision you've never fully understood? The room feels different now. Still quiet, still dim, but charged with a faint hum of possibility, the kind that makes you listen a little closer, breathe a little slower, feel a little deeper. You don't have the answer yet. You're not supposed to. For now, it's enough to sense the faint outline of a truth moving beneath the surface of your life. A truth you've brushed against before but never fully held. A truth that feels both unsettling and strangely familiar. And as you lie there, with the weight of the day softening and the veil of night wrapped around you, a quiet curiosity begins to rise. If your pain feels designed, then what? Exactly. Is it trying to show you? There are moments when you think you've finally outgrown certain wounds. Moments when you feel older, steadier, convinced that the past has loosened its grip on you. But then something small happens, almost trivial, and suddenly you're right back where you started. One sentence, one expression, one tone of voice, and the same old bruise lights up as if no time has passed at all. It's strange how quickly the past can reassemble itself inside you. A familiar tightening in your chest, a warmth rising in your face, that subtle drop in your stomach, as if you've fallen through a trapdoor built decades ago. You tell yourself it shouldn't matter anymore. You're an adult now. You've learned, healed, has moved on, but your body remembers what your mind tries to dismiss. There's a particular feeling you know too well, the one that started in childhood, long before you had the words to describe it. Maybe it was the way someone looked at you when you disappointed them, or the silence you felt when you needed comfort, or the moment you realized you had to shrink yourself to keep the peace. And those early moments didn't stay in the past. They followed you, shaped you, grew with you. You carried them into friendships, relationships, careers, into every room you walked into. And no matter how much you change, the patterns seem to find you again, as if they know exactly where you'll be. Look at your relationships. How many times have you found yourself drawn to the same dynamics, the same emotional traps, wearing different faces? A partner who feels distant in the same way a parent once did, a friend who mirrors an old wound with uncanny accuracy, a boss who triggers the exact insecurity you've spent years trying to outgrow. It's almost embarrassing how predictable it all is. Then there's the voice inside you, the one that sounds suspiciously like someone from your childhood, the voice that says you're not enough, or you're too much, or you need to earn your place, or you're one mistake away from losing everything. You know this voice isn't really yours, and yet it speaks with authority. It speaks with history, and your body obeys it before you even realize what's happening. There's the way you tense up when conflict appears, the way you brace yourself in conversations that shouldn't feel dangerous, the way your heart pounds when someone raises their voice, even if they're not angry with you, the way your entire nervous system reacts to things that pose no actual threat. Why does it still feel so real? Why does it still feel so personal? You've told yourself it's trauma, conditioning, psychology, labels that explain the surface but never quite touch the core. Because none of those labels explain the timing, they don't explain the precision. It's the precision that bothers you. Think about it. How the same theme keeps resurfacing, no matter how many times you try to rewrite it. How you keep meeting people who push the same emotional buttons, as if they've studied the script of your past. How certain challenges arrive at the exact moment you finally feel stable, pulling you back into questions you thought you'd answered. It's as if life has memorized your weak spots, as if it knows exactly where you're tender, as if it's following a design you've never seen. You've had moments, quiet ones, when you wondered why the same lessons keep circling back to you, why you can predict the shape of your next heartbreak before it arrives, why your body reacts before your mind has time to think. And the honest answer is, you don't know. You don't know why your childhood patterns appear in adulthood with such startling familiarity. You don't know why your wounds seem to evolve with you, keeping pace like old companions. You don't know why your life feels less like a series of random events and more like chapters written around the same recurring theme. There's a part of you that tries to rationalize it. It's just coincidence. It's just human nature. It's just the way I'm wired. But another part of you, the quieter part, the one that surfaces when the world goes still, knows better. That part has always suspected something else is happening here. Something you can't quite name. Because if this were random, it wouldn't feel so intentional. If this were chance, it wouldn't follow you so faithfully. If this were coincidence, it wouldn't strike with such uncanny accuracy. There's a discomfort growing inside you now. Not panic, more like the pressure of a truth leaning in, waiting to be acknowledged, a truth you've brushed against before but always backed away from. Why does your pain feel designed, not inflicted? Not deserved. Designed, like each wound, each heartbreak, each disappointment fits together with suspicious elegance. Forming a pattern too coherent to ignore, you can feel the edges of something larger now, pressing against your awareness, a possibility you don't want to consider, but can't fully reject, a possibility that threatens the story you've been telling yourself for years. It sits there, just out of reach, quiet, patient, inevitable. And you know that once you look directly at it, nothing in your life will ever feel the same. There's a moment after the frustration settles and the questions lose their sharp edge, when something inside you softens, not because the pain has disappeared, but because you finally allowed yourself to feel it without turning away, and in that softness, there's a quiet truth waiting, one that doesn't demand anything from you, only your attention. You've carried so much for so long, patterns that shaped you before you knew they were forming, wounds that grew with you, shadowing each new chapter, and you've spent years trying to make sense of them, searching for reasons that never quite fit. So let's start here, gently, with compassion for the version of you that has been doing the best they can with the story they were given. Take a breath, feel the weight of it all, and now consider something you've avoided for reasons you can't quite explain. What if none of this was accidental? Not the people who raised you, not the struggles that cling to you, not the heartbreaks that arrived right on schedule, not even the parts of yourself you've spent a lifetime trying to fix. What if your life has not been a series of random collisions, but a series of deliberate encounters, each one crafted with a precision you've never fully understood? It sounds impossible at first, even offensive. The mind pushes back. How could I ever choose this? Why would I ever choose this? But stay with the question, just for a moment. Feel how it unsettles something inside you and, strangely, comforts something else. Because if your struggles were not punishments, then what were they? Imagine this for a moment. Before you entered this life, before memory, before identity, before the narrowness of this single perspective, there was a part of you that saw clearly, a part of you that understood exactly what your soul needed to experience in order to grow into its next form. And from that vantage, you began choosing, not blindly, not recklessly, but with the same precision an artist uses when selecting colors, or a composer uses when arranging notes. You chose your relationships, not for their comfort, but for their impact. The people who would challenge you in exactly the right ways, the ones who would press on old wounds so those wounds would surface to be seen, be felt, and eventually be released. You chose the family you were born into, not because they were perfect, but because they were exact. Their flaws, their strengths, their silences, their storms, each one shaping you with meticulous detail. You chose the dynamic you would inherit, the roles you would unconsciously play, the emotional echoes you would spend a lifetime trying to understand, and you chose your body. This precise vessel, its sensitivities, its limitations, its strengths, its vulnerabilities, the way it reacts before your mind does, the way it holds memory even when you try to forget everything you judge about yourself, your fears, your tendencies, your emotional triggers. What if all of it was part of the design, not flaws to fix, but tools to work with? Because if you look closely, the patterns that have repeated throughout your life aren't random at all. They're consistent, purposeful, tailored. The same kind of person shows up in different forms. The same lesson knocks on your door wearing different faces. The same insecurity rises at the exact moment you're ready to confront it. Even your failures have timing. Even your breakdowns have choreography. There have been moments, brief, fleeting, when something inside you whispered that your life was speaking to you. Moments when coincidences lined up too perfectly, when intuition arrived too suddenly, when you felt pulled towards something without knowing why. These weren't accidents. They were reminders, breadcrumbs from a wider intelligence within you. Because beneath your personality, beneath your fears, beneath the story you tell about who you are, there is a deeper self that never forgot the design you set in motion. A self that speaks through gut feelings, through strange familiarity, through déjà vu, through the quiet certainty that some events were meant to happen, even if they broke you open. The same intelligence that grows trees, turns, seasons, moves tides, and spins galaxies, is the intelligence that chose the curriculum of your life, and that intelligence isn't separate from you. It is you, the larger you, the you that exists beyond this moment, this identity, this chapter. Feel that for a second. The idea that you might have authored the very experiences you spent years running from, not to hurt yourself, not to suffer, but to transform. Every wound was a doorway, every disappointment, a redirection, every loss, a clearing, every heartbreak, an invitation deeper into yourself. And the patterns that feel like traps, they're not traps. They're messages. They repeat because they're trying to wake you. And now, as you sit here with this new awareness opening inside you, something begins to shift. The weight of your past doesn't vanish. It becomes illuminated. Your life stops looking like a chain of accidents and starts looking like a map you created, a map you've been following without knowing you drew it. And with that recognition, something tender rises. A quiet empowerment, a sense of homecoming, a new question unfolding slowly inside you. If I designed all this without remembering, what might be possible now that I'm beginning to remember again? When the realization finally settles, truly settles, something inside you loosens. A tightness you've been holding for years, maybe decades, begins to release. Not all at once, not dramatically, but gently, like a hand unclenching after a long night of gripping the edge of the bed. You begin to see your life differently, not as a series of assaults or accidents, but as a path you walked with purpose long before you understood its meaning. Every turn, every detour, every difficult chapter, suddenly they feel less like punishments and more like invitations. Hard invitations. Yes, but invitations nonetheless. And without even trying, you feel the old story of victimhood starting to thin. It doesn't vanish, it just loses weight, loses solidity, as if someone has lifted a veil and the world beneath it is softer than you expected. For the first time, you can look at your body without the usual resentment. This body that has protected you, carried you, warned you, taught you. This body you once saw as flawed or inconvenient now appears as a deliberate choice. A vessel crafted for a very precise journey. Its sensitivities make sense. Its limitations make sense. Its quiet wisdom becomes impossible to ignore. And your family, the source of so many tangled emotions, begins to appear less like the architects of your pain and more like mirrors reflecting the lessons you came here to learn. You don't have to love everything they did. You don't have to excuse it. But you can finally see the strange perfection in how their presence shaped you. The wounds you carried so heavily begin to feel different too, not erased. Nothing this real disappears, but reframed, held with compassion instead of anger, understood instead of feared. There's a moment, almost imperceptibly, when you realize you've stopped asking, "Why did this happen to me?" and begun asking, "What did this experience awaken in me?" And that shift, small as it seems, changes everything. The horizon inside you widens, breath comes easier. You feel a little more space between your thoughts, a little more peace in the places that once held only tension. This is what it means to return home, not to a location, but to yourself, to the version of you that existed before the forgetting, before the noise, before the story that convinced you life was something done to you rather than something unfolding through you. And from this place, something beautiful becomes possible choice, not reactive choice, born from fear or habit, but conscious choice, the choice to respond differently, to interpret differently, to walk through your own experiences with awareness rather than resistance. You begin to realize that the power you've been searching for in relationships, in success, in validation, was never lost. It was simply waiting behind the story of who you thought you had to be. Now you can move forward with a lighter step, not because life becomes easier, but because you're no longer fighting its design. You're learning to walk with it, to trust the intelligence that shaped your journey long before you could name it. And as you breathe into this newfound spaciousness, a quiet awe rises, a recognition that you are not merely a character in this story, but the author remembering their own pen. You're not escaping your life. You're inhabiting it more fully. You're not erasing your past. You're reclaiming it. You're not waiting for the world to make sense. You're beginning to see that it already does. And as this understanding settles in your chest, like a warm dusk, you sense that something inside you has turned toward the light. Not with urgency, but with a calm, steady clarity. A soft voice inside you finally whispers, "I can live this life differently now." And you know, without needing proof or explanation, that you already are.